Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you do want to stay up to date, this is definitely the place to be. And I don't really have too much else to say in this intro other than if you do like this content but you're not a huge fan of YouTube, I do also post all these videos over on my Board Game Geek blog as well. So if you'd rather follow all your board game stuff over on Board Game Geek, I do have that option. And these are really nice because I do have these long form videos as well as their shorts version all on the same page here, along with all the usual links to the campaign pages and Board Game Geek pages. And I do also have blogs for all the different types of videos that I do put out, so I will leave a link to all of that in the description down below if you would rather follow over there. I haven't really mentioned this before, but I have been posting these every single week for the past few years, and I just never really brought much attention to it, but it is there if you are interested. As always, I do like to give a quick mention to Alex over at Board Game Co. because him and I do work together to keep track of all these upcoming campaigns. So if you do like this content, you'll definitely want to check out his as well. And he does post a video every single month going over the heavy hitters for that month in advance. So if you do want to see a little bit into the future, he did already post his video for September. And he does offer a lot more content as well, often following up on a lot of these games with his own previews or reviews. And if you do want to know the difference between those, he did also just put up a video going over that. So he has a wide selection of content. Definitely check him out if you haven't already, and make sure to subscribe if you do like his content. And if you're interested to hear about even more upcoming games, you'll definitely want to check out Zilla Blitz, especially if you're interested in the historical war games, because this is an area that I don't cover in near as much of detail as he does. He looks at a bunch of other crowdfunding platforms that are dedicated to this genre of game, and he'll be providing you all the details and info on when these games are launching. But of course, he does offer a lot of other content as well, and I'll have a link to his channel as well as Board Game Co.'s in the description down below if you do want to check either of these channels out. But that's everything I got for an intro. We do have a few exciting games launching this week, so let's check them out. And the first campaign we have launches on September 9th, and this one is a new expansion for the game Lands of Galzyr, and this one is called the Dreams and Mysteries expansion. This is going to be adding a bunch of new content into the game, but the main new items that it's going to be adding is a new adventure that is actually an inseparable duo. So if you do choose to play this character, you're actually going to be playing as both a lizard as well as a poisonous frog. But along with this character, this expansion is also going to be adding brand new abilities for all of the adventures that are already existing in the game, as well as extended personal quests so that each of the individual characters do have the opportunity to chase their dreams. The main overarching quest that this expansion adds is actually a string of mysterious events happening all over Galzyr, and players are going to have to investigate what's actually going on, but you're not going to be able to figure it out on your own. You're actually going to have to team up with an old detective. But like I said, this is also just going to be adding a bunch of new content that you can just go ahead and mix into the game, including new quests, companions, items, and encounters. And if you're not already familiar with this game, this is a cooperative, story-driven adventure board game that I have covered in the past during its original launch. And if you do want to learn more about how exactly it plays, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this is an open-world exploration game that takes place in the same world as the Dale of Merchants and the Dawn of the Peacemakers, which are previous games released by this designer. And in this game, players are going to be completing different quests and meeting different characters, and their actions and decisions are going to affect the world as the game moves forward. And this game plays in Chronicles similar to Oath, where it's a continuous adventure and the game remembers where you left off, and every time you play it, it's going to pick up in the same state as where you ended in your previous game session. So rather than being a set campaign, you can pick it up and play it as many times as you want, and the game's going to remember all the decisions that you made every time you play. All this remembering is completely built into the game, and there's no extra bookkeeping or manual tracking that you'll need to do in order for decisions made in the game to persist into future games. Another really nice thing about this structure is that there's less emphasis on playing with the same game group every time you play. And this game does support solo, cooperative, and competitive modes. For solo or cooperative, you're going to be playing a fixed number of rounds, and the competitive mode is played until someone has reached a specific number of prestige points. Each game represents a single month, and each round in the game represents a single day. And this game ties that all together with a really neat calendar on the board that tracks the time. But then also different encounters and quests can behave differently depending on the day that they occur. And other markers and events can be added to the calendar to just make it much more of a meaningful part of the game rather than just a counter that triggers the end. There's also a ton of quests and encounters that you can experience in this game. And then also, since some of them will behave differently depending on when you experience them, adds a ton of variety to this game. As you play the game, you'll be linking together all sorts of different stories, and this is all going to be managed through the Book of Adventures. And this is not actually a physical book. Instead, it's going to be an app that you can have open on your phone or tablet. And it's going to be used to present you the narrative, and also comes with a few perks like being completely spoiler-free. And the developers can also make changes to it even after the game has been released. Throughout the game, players are going to be building up 6 different skills, and these skills are going to help you for skill checks as you try to complete different quests and encounters that you experience throughout the game. For every skill check, you start with 5 generic dice, but then for each type of skill that you have, you can swap out one of those generic die for a die that represents one of your skills. If you're at level 1 of a specific skill, that means that you can swap out 1 die for a die of that type, and if you're at level 2, that means you can swap out 2. And depending on the type of objective that you're trying to complete, different skills are going to help you in different ways. Players can also augment their characters with different items, statuses, and companions that will help them along the way. Depending on the outcome of the encounter, your character or the board could be modified in some way. And to modify the board, you'll be placing down different cards to change areas of the map. Then your character may also be modified with different boosts or afflictions. And launching on September 10th, we have Promotion the Game. And this one is a party game where each player is trying to be the first to become basically the employee of the month. There are 2 ways that you can accomplish this, either by collecting 4 skill cards of the same color, or by being the last player standing. And the publisher was kind enough to send me a copy of this one, so to actually explain how this game plays, I'll just go ahead and show you. And I have this set up for 3 players here, and all I did was shuffle the main deck, and there is just 1 deck that you need to worry about. And then I just dealt 5 cards to each player. The main deck's made up of 2 different cards. There are the skill cards, which all have a color in the bottom right corner here. And I do have 2 blue ones already, so I'm halfway to my objective of getting 4 skill cards of the same color if I am able to find 2 more blues. They also have the color in their image, and there is a bit of flavor text. I was lucky enough to get 1 ability card as well, which is the course correction card, which allows me to cancel out another player's action card if another player plays something that I don't want them to. And turns in this game do go really quickly because all you do on your turn is draw a card either from the main deck or from the top of the discard pile, and then you're going to be playing a card or putting a card into the discard pile. Since I'm the first one going here, my only option is to draw from the main deck. And I got a green skill card, so that gives me the option to either try and continue to go for the blue or to try and go for the green. And I think I'm just going to continue to go for the blue, so I'll just go ahead and play that card into the discard. But then it is the next player's turn, and they just do the exact same thing here. They're going to be drawing a card, and let's say that they draw from the top of the deck. They got a course correction card, and then they are going to be choosing one of their cards to discard into the discard pile. The next player is going to be doing the exact same thing, so they're going to draw a card from the top of the deck, but they drew an ability card that allows them to force any other player to reveal their hand to everyone else, and they're just going to go ahead and play that card, and since they are right after this player, they might want to know what sort of cards they might be trying to get rid of, so that they can plan to try and collect that color of card. And this player actually only has 1 red skill card, and all the rest are ability cards. So the different cards they have are give a card to another player and then take a random card from their hand. Course correction, which I already went over. And then they have 2 power play cards, which allows them to take 2 turns in a row. Unfortunately, that doesn't give a whole lot of info for this player, other than that player is probably going to go for red, so they might want to try and go for something else. But the game continues like this until a player is able to get 4 skill cards of the same color, or until they are the last player standing. So how exactly do players actually get eliminated in this game? And to explain that, I'll just go ahead and draw the next card from the deck that I definitely didn't stack, which is the Performance Improvement Plan. And this one's a special card because you're not able to discard it from your hand like other cards, and the only way to get rid of this one is through the actions of another card. The problem with having this card is that if this deck completely runs out while you have this in your possession, then you are eliminated from the game. There is only 1 of these cards, so once it comes out, all the players are going to be doing their best to keep track of where exactly it is so that they don't end up getting it into their hand. Unfortunately for me, I don't have any other action cards in my hand that allow me to get rid of this just yet, but we still do have the whole deck to go through, so I do have some hope here. But until that opportunity comes up, I'm just going to get rid of this red card because I am going for blue after all. And this player might want to go for red, so they can just go ahead and draw from the top of this deck, which does give me information, but now they have 2 reds in their possession. Now they're going to play a power play in order to draw another card from the deck, which unfortunately got them a blue card, but they are getting very, very close now. A card that they have that could be really useful to me, since I have that performance improvement plan card, is this lateral move card, which allows you to give a card to another player and then randomly take one from their hand. There are more of these in the deck, and if I do come across one, I'd probably be hanging on to that to try and get rid of that performance improvement plan once this deck gets close to running out. But since they also have this card, it is possible that they might play it in a future turn in order to try and steal a card from me, and it is possible that they could end up stealing that performance improvement plan, which of course is hilarious for everyone except them. And that's pretty much all there is to know to play this game, and if this one does sound interesting to you, you can go ahead and find a link to their website in the description down below, where you can sign up and get notified once this one launches. And launching on September 10th, we have Gems of Iridescia, and this one is a competitive game where players are going to be trying to mine for different types of gems, which you'll then be able to trade in to complete different objective cards for victory points, or instead you can choose to sell those gems for money, which you can then spend in order to buy different items and gear to help you mine a little bit better. All the players do start at the bottom of the board, and then they're going to be moving either upwards or sideways, revealing those tiles in order to gain gems and other bonuses. As you move off a tile and onto a new one, you do also take the tile that you just moved from into your possession, which can gain you victory points for different sets at the end of the game, but it also means that more and more tiles are going to be removed from the board as the game goes on. Since players can only move forward and sideways, it is possible that they do get stuck on a tile with no tiles adjacent to them in that direction, and in that case they'll have to spend one of the gems from their possession in order to move on to the next space. The game ends once all the players reach the top row, but you might now be asking yourself, why would you want to rush and do that if you score points by collecting gems and completing those various cards? And there are a couple reasons that you might want to continue to move forward throughout the board, and the first one is that the players that are earliest to get to the top are going to be getting bonus victory points for being able to do that. But then also, as more players reach the top, when it becomes their turn, they can actually remove a tile from play, making it more difficult for the players that are still moving through those tiles. But the way that a turn works when you're not at the top of the board is that you're just going to be revealing 2 adjacent tiles, and each of these tiles will have different gems on them or different bonus icons, granting you victory points, additional dice, or even money. Once you've done that, you can move your miner meeple to any of the adjacent revealed tiles and then gain whichever gem was revealed there. But then you're also allowed to perform any amount of free actions, and the first one you can perform is just to sell any amount of gems of the same color, but you can only do this once per turn. You can also spend that money to buy any items or gear from the display, and one thing to note about the display is that there is always the persistent pickaxe out there, so that players can always buy more pickaxes, because another action you can perform on your turn is to spend a pickaxe in order to mine even more gems from your current tile. When you spend that pickaxe, you'll be able to roll your dice in order to determine how many more gems you get. The way that this works is that you're going to be comparing the dice that you rolled to the die matching the color of the gem that you are trying to mine. On the side of the board, there's going to be a bunch of different dice for each colored gem offered in the game, and if any of your dice rolled greater than the value depicted on that die, then that is going to be earning you another gem. Another cool thing about this is that the value of these dice also represent the current market value of their associated colored gem, which means that the gems are more easier to obtain when their values are low, but you're going to want to be selling them when their values are high. And these dice go up in value at the end of any turn where their gem was revealed. You do want to be a little careful with your timing here, because once a value of a die goes to 6, it can't go any higher than that, and once its gem is revealed again, it's going to be crashing all the way back down to 1. And I did mention that you can buy additional items and gear with your money, but of course you can also use those cards to take their associated action, which is another free action that you can do on your turn. Once you've done all the actions that you want or are able to do, you'll then be able to complete any of the objective cards that are currently out on display. And like I said, you're just going to be trading in any of the matching gems in order to complete that card, and then you'll be able to take that card into your possession. And each of these are going to be worth an amount of victory points at the end of the game, but they also have additional icons on them that you can set collect for even more victory points. There are some item cards that allow you to reserve these cards so that other players can't take them from you, but other than that, the only way that you can get these cards is by completing them first, which means that there is a bit of a race to try and get these. Another important detail is that each player is only able to hold 7 gems maximum at a time, which means that you do want to be spending them either to gain money or spending them in order to complete those various objective cards. This is extra bad because if you do end up gaining a gem and you don't have a place to put it, you have to actually give it to one of your opponents. But the game continues like this until all the players have reached the top, and then you're going to be adding up all the victory points, and the player with the most wins the game. And if you are interested in this one, you can go ahead and check it out, and I'll have it linked in the description down below. And also launching on the 10th, we have a Wayfarer's Tale, The Journey Begins, and this one is a competitive roll and write that is offering you a revised and expanded version of the original game, which was just called A Wayfarer's Tale. But this new version is going to have a few small rules tweaks that are going to be streamlining the game for you and also offering a more streamlined solo mode, but it's also going to be bringing in some new artwork and premium components, as well as new companions, special quests, and even weather conditions. And something that I really do like about this one is that the creators also provide a print and play version of the game on their website, which you can go ahead and check out. And this is just a smaller version of the game that will introduce you to the game and get you familiar with some of the new mechanisms. Other than that, this one will be playing very similar to the original, which I did cover back when it originally launched. So if you do want to know how that plays, I'll just go ahead and play that previous footage for you now. And this one is a competitive roll and write, and the way this game works is that each round you're going to be rolling 4 dice, with one of those die being only accessible to the active player. But each of the players will be able to choose 2 of the dice available to them to write down onto their own personal player sheet. And there's going to be 2 different sheets that players are managing. The first one is a map with different city locations that players are trying to visit in order to win the game. And then there's your main sheet that's broken into a whole bunch of different areas with spaces to write down the number of the die values that you chose. And each of these is going to allow you to move through different terrain out on the map, but they also all behave a little bit differently. One of these locations might always require you to put a die value that was larger or lower than the value before it, while other locations might require you to roll doubles or to put values in a grid following a certain pattern. But a really neat aspect that affects every area on this board is that there's going to be some spaces that are associated with a diamond, and whichever value you put into that is going to grant you that amount of victory points. So you'll always want to try and put the highest value as possible in those boxes, but it might be difficult depending on the pattern that you're trying to fulfill in that specific area. And alternatively, some of the spaces are associated with monsters, and the value that you put into those boxes is actually going to lose you victory points. And I mentioned that the main purpose of the map is to visit the different locations, and the more that you visit, the more victory points you'll gain, but there's also different icons scattered throughout the map that can gain you special abilities and actions in order to mitigate those cases where you lose victory points or augment those cases where you can gain them. And of course, the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. And launching on September 12th, we have Puerto Rico 1897, the special edition. And this one is a competitive game for 1 to 5 players. And this one is also our Discord pick of the week. And it is also my own personal pick of the week as well, because I absolutely love this game. But before the pretty artwork and components fool you, I do want to let you know that this is a very cutthroat game. And the game can feel very punishing as well, where you end up not being able to do even a single thing on your turn sometimes. And the other players can sometimes try to force you into that situation. This game's going to be getting the same treatment that Castles of Burgundy did, with a brand new big box edition that's going to have all your different expansions as well as upgraded components and brand new artwork. There is also a small tweak with the theme on this one, because rather than this one being Puerto Rico, this one is Puerto Rico 1897 for a reason. The reason for that is that this is a specific year where slavery was abolished, but then it's also before the American colonists arrived. So this is a specific instance in time where Puerto Rico had its own independence. The reason they did this is because the original game did have a very contentious theme, It does mention colonists in its rulebook, and also people did imply certain things based on the color of certain components. I personally feel like that's a little bit of a reach, but I do also think a game about you being an independent Puerto Rican is a lot more fun than being a colonist. The small changes to the theme here, as well as the overall aesthetic, are going to make you feel more like you're playing in a tropical paradise, which I think makes the game a lot more fun. And it also does make the game more welcoming to anyone that did take issue with that original theme, which is not a bad thing. But like I said, this still can be a very mean game. The game does look beautiful here with all the brand new deluxeified components. You're going to have recessed boards as well as a designated spot for basically every component offered in the game. Each of the boards does come with a little portrait giving you a bit of a persona, which also ties into that brand new theme. And these new boats are a really cool component because there's actually a section of the boat that you can slide in and out depending on player count in order to modify the amount of goods that those boats can hold. On the topic of those goods, there's also deluxeified components for all of those, which are very detailed and look really cool. There's also going to be miniatures offered for all the different workers as well as the different buildings, but from what I can tell from this campaign page, these are an additional add-on, which I am a big fan of because not everyone wants to dive in on all the different miniatures. I tend to only get the miniatures if they don't also make the game more fiddly, which I think the buildings probably will, but the workers probably won't, so I'm sure they're fine. But I'm going to hold off from being too opinionated until more info is provided on the campaign, and if you are watching this video a bit later, I will have a link to that down below. The way that I think these buildings will work based on the info that I have so far is that you're still going to be using these tiles whether or not you have the miniatures add-on, and the reason for that is because there are multiples of the same buildings offered in this game, and they're going to be out on the buildings board, and you keep track of how many buildings are left based on whether or not there are tiles there. I think where the miniature comes into play is after you purchase that tile, you're going to be putting that tile onto your board, and then also locating the associated miniature, which you'll then be able to put on top of that tile. If I'm correct with those assumptions, this will be adding a little bit of fiddliness to the game, but it's really not a whole lot. You're just going to have to find that miniature and then put it on your board. Just keep in mind that you'll also have to have space out on your table for any of those unused miniatures, and the overhead of putting them all away, and possibly taking up additional space on your shelf if this doesn't all fit in that same box. And speaking of expansions, there are going to be a few offered in this campaign, including a few new ones. The first one's just going to be a buildings expansion that's going to add new buildings into the game that you'll be able to swap out with the existing ones. Then there's also the Citizens expansion, which is also going to add a few new buildings, but it's going to have a mechanism that also incorporates these citizen miniatures. There is the Smuggler expansion, which is going to add a new role into the game. And then the Festival expansion, which is going to offer a brand new board where players are going to be able to contribute different resources in order to gain the associated rewards. But if you're not familiar with this game, this is a game that plays over a series of rounds, and every round players are going to be drafting roles from the supply. There are a bunch of different roles offered in this game, and there's going to be more roles than there are players, which means that there will be some left over each round, and any that aren't chosen are going to get additional money added to those cards, making them worth more on the following round. But players are going to be going in turn order, and whichever role they draft is going to be granting an action to all the players at the table. The only difference is if you drafted the role, you're also going to get an additional bonus. This will make your action just a little bit better than all the other players for that specific action. You're going to be using these actions in order to buy buildings, which will grant you victory points and special abilities, or the actions could gain you money or plantations, which help you produce various goods, or the roles action could grant you workers, which you need to assign to buildings or plantations in order to activate them. Or there are also roles that allow you to sell goods to either the bank or to the ships, which each work a little bit differently. The bank can only accept one of each good until it's cleared, and it's only cleared once all 4 of its spaces are filled. And then the ships work similarly, where you're going to be filling them up until they're cleared, but the difference with them is that they can only accept a good of a single type. And that's pretty much how you play the game. You're going to be using those roles in order to build buildings and plantations, and then assigning workers in order to activate them, generate goods, and then sell them to the bank or those boats for victory points, and then the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins. And I know my description here does make the game sound pretty simple, but it actually does have quite a lot of depth. since the order that these actions activate in a given round does have a lot of implications associated with it, and pretty much every action does leave a player with the short end of the stick, so you're always trying to do whatever you can to not be that player, which also creates the opportunity of trying to force the other players into that position. I personally love mean games, and that's why this one is my pick of the week, and if you do want to check it out, I will have it linked down below. And launching on September 13th, we have Suros, the board game, and this one is a cooperative game for 1 to 3 players. And in this game, players are going to be fighting against mutated beasts that have been altered by a mysterious substance. Each of the beasts come with their own set of combat cards as well as unique effects that they're going to be introducing into the game. And if they're not taken care of, they're going to be growing stronger and transforming through different stages. The game alternates between the player's phase and the enemy's phase, but on a player's turn, they'll be able to spend action points in order to move their character around on the board, use abilities, heal, craft, or equip and remove gear, or attack one of the various enemies. And the way that you do that is through dice rolling, and if you do roll a value that you're not particularly happy with, you can spend an action point for each die that you want to re-roll. And if you are able to defeat the enemy, you'll be able to harvest their body parts as resources, which you can then spend for crafting. You can craft all sorts of different items and gear, which you can see on the left-hand side here. But once it does get into the enemy's turn, you're essentially going to be drawing a card from the enemy deck and just resolving its effects. And this can have all sorts of negative consequences to the players. But the game continues like this until the players are defeated or they defeated the enemy boss. And in that case, they win the game. And if you do want to check this one out in more detail, I will have it linked in the description down below. And that's all I got this week, but don't leave yet because we still do have an awesome giveaway to announce. And this one's going to be for a pledge for the Quest Kids Realms of the Kingdom. And this is a game where players are going to be trying to collect different resources by moving into different tiles, and then using those resources to defeat various enemies. If you don't have the resources that you need in order to defeat an enemy, you can also ask for help from the other players. And if they do choose to help you, that's going to gain them a Kind Kid card, which will grant them with either some sort of special ability, victory points, or additional resources or treasure. This new expansion is going to be adding a few different realms into the game, which all have their own unique theme. You're going to be able to jump to and from them through these various portals, with each of those realms offering a specific gem that players are going to be trying to collect in order to trigger the end of the game. And the gems might also come with a benefit that you'll be able to discover as well. And I do want to thank the publisher here for donating a really exciting giveaway, because this one is for an all-in pledge, which will get you the original game as well as all the expansions, including this new one. And to enter this giveaway, all you got to do is leave a comment down below with the hashtag quest, and you can say anything that you want, but if you are looking for something in particular, maybe you could let us know something special from your childhood. For myself, my favorite childhood TV show, and even into adulthood, has been Dragon Ball Z. And I remember watching that over and over as a kid through the various sagas until it would just be randomly reset back to the beginning. And I wasn't able to actually watch the entire thing until I was like 19, when I decided to just get all the episodes and watch them myself, which I do have absolutely no regrets. Although it does borderline on actually being a kid's show. Good luck in the giveaway, but now let's go ahead and draw the winner from last week's giveaway, which was for a pledge for Lords of Heaven. And to draw a winner, I use this application here, and all these extra names down here are bonus entries for my supporters over on Ko-fi. If you do like this content and you want to help support the channel and make all these efforts just a little bit more sustainable for me, I really do appreciate it. And you can find a link to my Ko-fi in the description down below. But let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner of Lords of Heaven is Congratulations on the win here. I will reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a awesome pledge here. Or you can email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out for you. I hope you like this one because I personally do think it does look like a ton of fun. And that's everything for this week. Not a whole ton of games, but I definitely will be backing Puerto Rico in one form or another. It's a game that I wanted for a while now, but I knew this deluxe edition was coming out, so I've just held off on it until now. I do recommend it if you do like cutthroat games, but if you don't, you're probably not going to like this game no matter how pretty it looks, so just try to keep that in mind. Hope the info was helpful, and as always, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.